Good evening. Welcome to Ask the Mayor. I'm Kurt Morris, the mayor of San Dimas, and to my right is the man who has the answers, the city manager, Blaine Michaelis. Blaine, good to see you this evening. I know you have all kinds of material to talk about, but we do want to remind everybody in the audience that our real purpose to be here is to give you an opportunity, if you want to give us a call and talk to us about whatever is on your mind related to the city of San Dimas. So, Blaine, we had a one of those long city council meetings the other night where we heard people's opinions about a lot of things. Not a lot of things, actually, about one on the matters that we're considering. But it's tiring.
Yeah, it was a long night.
It was a long night.
You know, though, there's another part to that meeting that I always like to comment on. When we give the recognitions to distinguished service to youth, it really is one of my favorite times to recognize so many good people for years and years of just do great things in this town, and it's nice to take a moment and thank them.
You know, that's so true, and if you looked around, it's impossible for us to identify all of the people in this community who are doing it, not in any way associated with government, but just doing good things and participating in organizations that do good things. And, you know, it's too bad we can't identify all of them and honor them. And I think it's the ones that for youth, they're a good selection of people, both people who work at it professionally and people who do it as just a contribution. One of the things I've noticed about the ones who do it professionally, what they're really being honored for is over and beyond their job.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Yeah, it sure is. And the thing is, they would never do it for recognition.
Nope.
And in fact, it's just quiet service.
Yeah.
For a long,
some of them are
time.
a little shy about being up there.
Yeah.
But really, and over the years, it's been a wide variety of things that people do for the community. Another great event was on yesterday in the afternoon. They dedicated that the Lone Hill Gym. I'll tell you, if you get a chance to go to Lone Hill to an event or anything and see their gym, it is really amazing. I mean,
it is.
There were no gyms at high school or otherwise that looked like that gym a few years ago. And I also watched some of those kids dribbling the ball and things like that. And there was particularly a young woman, and she was not an 8th grader, I'm sure, but she was along dribbling the ball with her right hand, and all of a sudden shifted to her left hand and was equally good. I thought, pretty impressive.
Great.
So they were, but the gym is so well designed.
It is
so light with the windows and everything that they have. So
right.
So that's one of the things that in fact, there were school board members there, and I commented to a couple of them that this is a situation where the people in San Dimas and Laverne put their trust in the school district and the school administration and the school board to use the money wisely by passing 2 bond issues fairly close together. And my observation is the school district completely carried through on its promise to the people to use that and invest that money very wisely in facilities that will be in use for years and are top quality.
Here they are.
No compromises. Things that will last and will be good.
Yeah, and all great amenities. And I mentioned I saw some school folks there and thank them for their viewpoint as far as how they view school facilities as their community facilities. So and so many of our recreation programs use those community facilities, and so we appreciate that working relationship.
It's one thing I think they were very wise to recognize that gyms are particularly multi-use, great community assets.
Right.
And they built one there, and I think the one they built at Ramona is a little different, but also very, very high quality.
Yep. So great work.
It was. I was impressed. And of course, their entertainment or performance center that's on the campus there, right at San Dimas High School, is also that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And they that well designed, well built. They invested the money very wisely. So I just would pass on to anybody associated with the school district how much you just really are doing a good job for the kids and for education, which is as important as anything a community does, is the way it educates the youth. And I think here we're very fortunate that they're doing a great job.
I agree. Well, good. And while we wait for that first phone call, maybe I can give an announcement about an upcoming event that'll happen in the next 10 days. On April 22nd, it's a Sunday. There's an event, a unique event that we've not had in our region before. It's called Ciclavia. And what it is, it's a closing of the street from 9 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So no vehicles will be on the street. And the encouragement is that you bring your bicycle or your skateboard or whatever other means of mobility besides a vehicle.
Or even your walking shoes.
And come and just participate in riding or walking along the street. So Bonita Avenue from basically Cataract through San Dimas and into Laverne, and then you'll see how the route changes. It goes down to Arrow Highway and then has another change on the other side of Laverne's. But San Dimas, Laverne, Pomona, and Claremont are all cooperating to close a street, a path, a route, so that the street will be available for all these kinds of uses except for vehicles during that time. And there are places along the route, they call them hubs, where there'll be entertainment or information provided. And our hub in San Dimas is right here at City Hall. And so if you want to know where you start or where you can go to find out information about it, you can certainly check out our website, but you can start at the hub in San Dimas, which is here at City Hall. And I think there's some preliminary ceremonies at 8:30, but the event starts at 9. And so we encourage people to take advantage of it because it is so unique. But it's an effort to encourage transportation besides vehicles. So it's that kind of a day with entertainment, and there'll be the restaurants along the route may offer special food items and information available. You can get a chance to ride a rented bike, which is trying to get more popular. So you could, like when you go to a city and you don't have a bicycle, you can rent one for a given period of time. So a couple of vendors who do that for a living are making their bikes available, so you can see what it's like to ride their rented bikes for free. So there's just a number of things to just try and give people information and encouragement to take advantage.
Even if you want to, and you thought this would be a great idea, you can walk right down the middle of Bonita Avenue from San Dimas to Laverne.
That's right.
And you won't be run over by a car, or might be hit by a skateboard or a bicycle, but it will be kind of unusual to have the street closed for all day long, all the way to Laverne, and then it actually on the other side of Laverne, almost where you get there's a flood control channel there. You turn down Fulton Road to go down to Arrow Highway, and then continue on all the way to Claremont. But if you want to, you can spend the whole day in San Dimas.
Sure. That's why we call it a hub. You can be here all day.
There'll be a lot of things happening.
So we encourage folks to take advantage of that. So just again, some things that maybe some updates on things we've been working on. The city has received a grant to prepare a homeless plan, a plan of action for the city. We're part of other cities that are in this same situation. So there was a public meeting held. Most recently, in order to be able to get a good feel for what would be a good plan, the consultant in the Sheriff's Department made arrangements to meet with some of the folks who are homeless in our community to find out their situation and their circumstance. in an effort to maybe identify a direction or a means of help or support that would be most effective given the population we have. So that recently took place, and I gotta brag a bit. The consultant said this was the best visits that he had had in any of the communities. The Sheriff's Department was well prepared, and as far as being able to help make sure that they got a chance to meet some of our folks in our community, and they collected some really good information they felt that will really be helpful to us in being able to hopefully put together a meaningful plan.
I think it's worth noting that our Sheriff's Department, and the Sheriff's Department maybe in general, but the San Dimas station, they do a lot of things that are not the old, really traditional
Right.
policing of times before, because there's a realization that there are people out there who need some kind of help, and it's difficult to give them that help. And many of the homeless are in that category, and they have a very, I mean, a good record of dealing with people as individuals and not as saying, well, these are all whatever. And it's amazing to me when we had the meeting that the city talked about it, how much the deputies who are working, how much they knew about the situation, and they knew a lot about the people's circumstances. And it was really revealing when one of the people who's been doing it for several years said that they've offered a lot of help of various kinds, but in general, a whole lot of those homeless people, it's very difficult to help because of whatever the circumstances are. They don't want to move into some kind of housing that they have to conform to various things, and so it's. But I have been impressed that their approach to it is really a humane, almost social worker type of trying to help people who are obviously in some kind of distress.
I think that's why they're so successful in being able to get information, is because of the way that our Sheriff's Department interacts with their community. So, but timing-wise, the recommendations of the report are probably hopefully prepared probably by May, with coming to the council late May and adoption of the plan in June. And other cities are doing the same thing, all of our neighboring cities, and so many of the elements of the plan involve working with each other, to be able to pool resources or services to help make a difference. But it's coming along, and we'll see that fairly soon. Again, while we wait for that first phone call, or many, one of the things that maybe it'd be helpful to explain to our viewers, some of the things we look at when we try and take a look at the economic development of our community. How are we doing with business growth, or how are we doing with being able to encourage business success in our community? So what we do is we take and kind of prepare some statistics every now and then and compare them from year to year. And for example, one of the things we look at is how many businesses does San Dimas have compared to other cities of our same size? How do we compare this year and then previous years? Are we growing? Are we losing businesses? How do we compare even with larger cities in our area on a per capita basis? So just trivia points perhaps, San Dimas has 1,290 retail businesses in San Dimas. These would be businesses that report sales tax. There's a retail component or transaction to it. That's about 141 more businesses than an adjacent city. Gosh, Kurt, should I even say? It's a city very similar to us. There's two others that are about the same size. San Dimas has 141 more than one of them, and 400 more than the other one. So it's kind of a marked difference as far as the number of businesses. And it's not to say, gee, that's great, we're going to rest on our laurels, but it is interesting to note or to feel good that the retail centers that we have are vibrant, at least as compared to cities of our size.
Yeah, and I've noticed people may, when they think of retail centers, they may not have immediately in mind all of the retail centers we have. Because I notice, and it just happened because I've noticed that there are very few vacancy signs.
Right.
And these are the kind of combination Some of them light manufacturing, sales, do other things. You know, during the recession, some of those were, there were a lot of vacancies. There aren't many now. Right. And some of those are, I don't know how big a sales tax generators they are, but they are job providers, and right. they're signs of economic activity, but they are not in the typical shopping centers, and they're places, many of them are destination kind of businesses that people who know about them go there, or they're, in many cases, they may actually be wholesaler and retailers. But it's, so when we talk about the businesses, we're talking about a lot more than just the 2 or 3 shopping centers.
Right, and you know that what's interesting too is we look at this as within our city limits. People don't often shop within city limits. In fact, the other day someone said, "Yeah, I'm in your town a lot, in your area. I go to the Donut Man all the time."
Yeah, right.
And so this is one way we look at our business orientation, is within our city limits and the dollars that are generated from sales tax numbers in our jurisdiction. We recently had another report that we'll be sharing with the City Council this coming week that looks at the market area. In other words, a driving radius of 3 miles, or I'm sorry, 3 minutes. We don't go by miles, we go by minutes, because it's how convenient, 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 7 minutes or 15 minutes, which is the way people more shop. They don't necessarily say, "Gee, I'm now going across the, the city jurisdictional line and I'm in Covina." They'll just say, "I'm going over here because that's where I." So we're doing both analyses to be able to look at what's within the city limits and what's within our market area, because the market area is probably a more accurate understanding about how well we're doing, or there's some things that we could use in our market area. But back to this point, so of the 1,290 businesses that are in town, we had in this report, there were 77 net new businesses from one year to the next in those 1,290. The others, a city next to us was 51 net more, and another city was 21. And actually another adjacent city had 26 less businesses during this time. So again, I think that's kind of helpful for us to see how well we're doing. The other thing that was interesting is we also look at the number of brand new business licenses. Now, we recognize that some businesses change, they may go out of business, and so that's why we want to understand the net increase. But as far as new businesses is another good indication to kind of say, well, who are they and how many are there? So this last year in 2017, there were 131 new business licenses in San Dimas. To give you an idea of what some of them were, internet sales, manicurist, manufacturing, an industry manufacturing, pest control, a lot of services, 3 psychologists, 2 real estate offices. So in this case, as I look over this, there's a lot more folks that are getting into business. Some of these are home occupations that are starting to come up, but cosmetologists we certainly have hair salons in town, and cosmetology is a big part of that.
Neither of us have much use for those.
That's why I think I know about them in town. I never quite get there myself. But it's a way to kind of indicate there's a handyman, health food store, as I look through this. But on the other hand, there's some more retail stores and that have kind of come in the way as well. But 131 is good. Last year was 171. The year before that was 140. And so each of those numbers are very strong, and frankly they're more than our neighbors. And it's another helpful thing for us to be able to kind of see how we're doing. Boy, I sure hope we get a call, Kurt. I hope
this is good information. Blaine, people are probably very interested.
I think too.
I can't think of, there are no basketball playoffs on.
That's true.
We should have no competition tonight.
That's true. The other thing that we kind of look at is, so we can compare to other cities that might be larger than we are, is we'll take a look at things on a per capita basis. And one of the things that's important is we certainly always want a strong economic base. that means that not only will we have sales tax that will be able to help support city services, but job generation, or being able to have places for people to have employment, where there's investments in our community with new businesses, but also industrial areas. Or it's another way to kind of indicate is there growth in our job production in our community as well. And so if we can look at things in a larger perspective if we go on a per capita basis, because two cities are similar to us and another neighbor is much larger. If we took at the annual sales tax that's produced per resident in San Dimas, it's $152 per resident. That would compare to some of our neighboring cities that are $113 or $97 per capita. And a larger city is $140 per capita. So you can see at 152, we're certainly in the realm of having not only the highest number of businesses, but those businesses are productive and their sales volumes are strong. And the other thing that's interesting for us is to take a look at what's the total investment, the total value of the buildings in San Dimas. And frankly, 2 years ago, San Dimas inched over $5 billion in assessed valuation. That would be all structures in the community, residential, commercial, industrial. Schools are not included in that, they're not on the tax rolls, but whatever's on the tax roll is worth more than $5 billion in San Dimas. Well, that was last year. Now we're at $5.4 billion.
Wow, that's a big change.
It is. And some of that comes from new businesses that are built. Some comes from the growth of the value of property. Some comes from the sale of residential property because when it's sold, it's revalued. But to be at $5.4 billion, that would be $150,000 per person value. Our neighboring cities are at $120 and $130. So I guess you could say the value of development in San Dimas per capita is a good 20 to 30% higher than some of our neighboring cities. That's a good number to know that when the value of real estate is growing and the value of the economic base is growing, those are good signs to be able to, if you're looking for stability in your community.
Though one of the things that everybody's talking about, and we're talking about it too, is affordable housing.
Right.
And we at one time had a fair amount of affordable housing. The housing is still there, but the prices, the increase in the sales prices of residential real estate in San Dimas have really increased a lot.
Right.
And there's nothing we can do about that. We don't want to say, well, you can't sell your house for more money, you got to sell it for less. But it does, it creates an issue. There are a lot of people, the problem of producing housing for low to moderate income in areas where people want to live and are willing to pay really premium prices for houses that are many years old and are in the old downtown area. It's very difficult because the land prices go up and it's people are looking at things where you're now some of the land in San Dimas that's in the commercial kind of areas, you're talking about $22 a square foot for vacant land. There's not very much of that, but those are appraisals of, and that you think, well, how much is that? Well, that's about $900,000 an acre.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult figuring out a way to build residential and then a lot of times if government is involved, as we know so well, it costs a lot more for government to build something than it does for, and therefore in the redevelopment era, 20% of the money from redevelopment was set aside for housing that would qualify for low or moderate, income, and we spent that in a variety of ways. In our newest development in town, the Avalon Apartments, there are apartment units there that are priced, that have basically a price control based on us, the city's redevelopment agency, paying money to the developer to subsidize the building of those buildings to provide that. But then, if you use money that way, those buildings did not have to be built under the prevailing wage laws. Most of the things being suggested in Sacramento now are saying, but the prevailing wage laws will apply. Some of them, even though there's no private money put into them. Well, one of the things that I don't think you find anybody in California who disagrees, you cannot afford to build residential housing and pay the prevailing wages, which is really an artificial number that's created. But it's substantially higher. It's 30% higher than probably what it would cost otherwise. It just doesn't work. So the people who are in Sacramento and places are everywhere, when they're talking about, well, we'll build more houses. Well, we won't build more houses unless they change some of the rules.
Right.
And it's not the zoning rules. It's the things that add so much cost.
Amen.
So, yeah, but, and the other point, and this is so important, Blaine is the point, sales tax is absolutely vital to San Dimas, because in 1968, when Proposition 13 was passed, San Dimas had a very low property tax rate. The cities around us had high property tax rates. So when they set up everything on that, they said everybody's going to pay the same property tax rate. That's what Proposition 13 did. So as the rate gets applied, they said, well, San Dimas, you've been getting along without as much sales tax or without as much property tax as the other people. So from now on, you won't get all of your property tax that's attributed to your city. You will get about 60% of it. Is it about 60 or there? So we are more dependent on sales tax than anybody around us. That was one of the reasons it was so good when the voters passed an ordinance, I guess, I don't know what we call the tax, to increase the transient occupancy tax, which is a tax that we get, and made that be a very important source of income for the city of San Dimas. And it has really worked out well, because the rate increase got us more money, but all of the motels in San Dimas are doing very well. Yeah. Some of them are doing extremely well. Not many vacancies. We do well on that too. But because of our property tax sort of deficit compared to cities around us, we really are dependent on sales tax and on our transient occupancy tax and on doing other things to build a tax base. And Blaine has been working for the last year, Blaine and Ken both, and other members of the staff, they've been working on building a sustainable, everybody talks about sustainable now, but they're really looking at sustainability for San Dimas to go forward on a stable basis over the next few years. And some of the things that he's telling us tonight are part of that. But he's also we've talked about that at our study sessions for the budget. But it is not an accident or just happenstance that the city of San Dimas is in very good condition financially compared to many of our neighbors. We have a few advantages compared to them in that we don't have public safety pensions that are much, much more expensive than the pensions for other employees. But it's been a lot of, this is not by accident. The fact that this city hall was built at a really good price, rebuilt, and it's a great workable building that'll be good for the next 35 or 40 years without much added to it, was the fact that we were ready when the recession came, we were ready to do it. We had saved the money, set it aside. It's planning, you can't do financial planning for a city 1 year at a time. You just can't do it. If you do, there'll be a year that all of a sudden you'll fall off the cliff. So that's my editorial, but I think
well said.
that's why, I appreciate so much your leadership in the city of keeping us on that track of looking down the line so that you can say 3-4 years from now, even though we're going to be paying more into the PERS pension fund, we're going to be paying more for a lot of other things, we will be able to sustain that because of what we have done and what we are doing.
Amen. The other thing I wanted to review as far as the information we try and keep an eye on is what is the building activity? What is the, folks who want to come in and do things in the city and get a building permit. So we do take a moment every now and then and take a look at how many building permits we would issue. San Dimas issues combination building permits. In other words, if you're building a project and you need electrical permit, a plumbing permit, or a roofing permit, we count that sometimes as a combination permit.
Hello, you're on the air. Thank you for calling.
Hi.
Hello.
And hi. I didn't want to be the first one to call, but
I'm glad you were. Thank you.
Before the time ran out. My question tonight is regarding the latest on the Metro Gold Line. I attended a meeting for the Traffic Safety Committee, and I have been informed that they're talking about putting a platform station behind CVS. And I wanted to know if that's correct and what will happen to those properties on either side, or will it be maybe an elevated platform station? And I'm wondering about the parking that's going to go along with it.
Okay, the plan that they're talking about now is to have a parking garage that will their access will be off of Arrow Highway, and it will be, do you know where the dog kennel is? There's a dog kennel that's in an old house, and beside it there's a building that was occupied by an auto mechanic, and the back part was by a pool chemical company or something like that. That's the property that they're looking at primarily, and a part of the city yard, to have the parking there and then access from there to a platform that's basically at track level. So that they will not be taking any other properties except just that property. There is some discussion, and I don't know exactly where they are now, and I'm going to ask Blaine to give us the latest, but at one time they were talking about a parking structure of about 430 cars. They have talked about maybe they would reduce that, but that's the plan. But Blaine knows the latest on it, and we'll happily let him tell you.
Yeah, as far as the number of spaces, that it is still up in the air. If it's a 430 space parking structure, it would be 3 levels, ground and then 2 above. If it's less than that, the parking structure may be smaller with a little bit of surface parking. But still, the property being talked about for all of the parking is as the mayor described. It's no other properties but those. The question is just how many parking spaces will be built as part of the project. Did that answer your questions?
Yes, but I have a second
question to go along. Go right ahead.
I live on West Via Vaquero, and I noticed we have carpoolers who are using our street instead of the park and rides, and that was my question to the Traffic Safety Committee. And so if this parking structure will be on Arrow Highway, I'm afraid about my street becoming even more impacted with commuters who will choose to use side streets instead of a parking garage. So I'm wondering how.
Well, I can tell you that's one of the concerns we have had when they talked about reducing the parking side, the amount of the parking on site. We would have had, in some way, we will have to limit parking on residential streets with either by permit, by some other device, because we have assured Metro that if they do that to us and count on our streets in the city for all the commuters to park there, and there'll be cars all the time, that we will not let that happen. I don't know, Blaine, if you can.
We share your concern. The mayor's right. When they talked about either reducing the parking or charging people to use the parking structure, both of those things we thought would discourage people from using the parking structure and parking in retail parking lots, let alone in your neighborhood or any of the other neighborhoods that are around the station. So what Metro has promised us is that they would work with us on being able to make sure that the commuters parked where they should park, and they weren't impacting other parking needs in the community. That's their promise, but we still have many details to work out with them. But we share that concern very much.
Thank you. I appreciate the reassurance.
Okay, thank you for calling. We appreciate it. And thank you for being the first to call. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
By the way, now that the ice has been broken, everybody can call. Please call if you have anything you'd like to talk to us about. We're happy to take those calls. We've got a lot of time over the weeks and months ahead to explain all these other things to you. Blaine comes prepared to have a program that we can put on so that we're not just sitting here. We're not going to sing or anything like that, because that might not be good. But our real purpose is, if you'd like to call us, call.
What we're talking about, and please interrupt folks, we're talking about the number of building permits that are issued in any given year. We track that to kind of see if there's any trends, or to get a feel for what's the construction activity in our community.
And I think you were in the combination.
Yeah.
That's counted only as one.
Right, so we count, in some cases, if your project involves many different permits, we'll count it as one permit. So in our numbers, last year we had just about 930 building permits, combination permits, and everything issued. The year before it was just over 1,000 building permits. And the year before that it was over 1,000. So we've been hovering between 900 and 1,000 in a year. If you take the total number of permits, the non-combination permits, we issue about 4 or 5 building permits every day City Hall's open. In other words, and a permit could be as large as a major commercial building or as small as a water heater. So on average, we do 4 to 5 every single day.
Do all of those permits require at least one on-premise inspection of the work?
Correct.
Okay.
So, I mean, some of them are simple with like water heaters, but some cities will collect a water heater inspection fee, but they don't, or permit fee, but they don't inspect. We do. We do to ensure that it's code compliant. On a re-roof, if you're just replacing the felt or the paper underneath, we inspect that too, and other cities may not. So whatever is a permit, we do the inspection, and then we final the permit. So if we issue 4 or 5 a day, we're also finaling 4 or 5 a day and plan checking 4 or 5 a day. So this level of productivity has been the same for the last several years now, which is kind of good. I mean, it shows that, that there's new construction as well as renovation work or additions or remodeling or maintenance being performed on buildings. So it's a good measurement. Not to tell the city, but a city next door to us had 564 building permits So we're the same size, but on the other hand, our permit issuance is nearly double. So on the other hand, the other city is about where we are. So it's just, I don't know that we look at these things to kind of say, well, we did well here or we need to do more there. It's a way to double check just to kind of get a feel for, are we moving forward and are we making headway? But
I think one of the things that the issuance of permits, particularly since there's not a lot of new housing being built a lot of the time, is that's good evidence that the infrastructure, the privately owned infrastructure in the city is being maintained.
Right.
And that the value is being maintained there. And that's, it's kind of interesting that our city is what, 58 years old now.
Right.
There are a lot of buildings that we used to consider a building 50 years old was like you almost had to get a CEQA permit to be able to do anything with that. But now almost all of them are over 50 or getting there. Right. Certainly the bulk of the housing in San Dimas, I would say half of it, has been built since I've been a member of the city council.
I think you're right.
And so we have a lot of housing and other kinds of commercial and industrial kind of building that if nothing were being done to it, it would be starting to age and to become obsolete or not very well maintained.
Let me just kind of give a pitch. I know some folks think, well, I can just do this little construction job and do it myself, or my brother is good at hammering nails, and so you may not get a permit. You know, the permits are based on the valuation of the job. For example, if you're doing a water heater change out, it would be probably between $70 or so to get a building permit for that water heater change out. The benefit you get for that is we will come and inspect. And when it comes to a water heater, wouldn't you really want to make sure that all the gas connections are per code, that it's properly vented? Many of the new code requirements have a tray underneath the water heater. All of these things are code required. And if you installed something or someone came in and did not get a permit, you wouldn't have the assurance that the gas connections are proper, or that they're the right kind of materials, or that it's properly vented. I mean, if you change out to a different kind of water heater, say it's a on-demand system, the heating has to be redone, and you use the old venting system just because it's there and you don't want to spend the money or you're concerned about the cost, or you're getting new felt put in underneath your roof tiles. The cost for these, permits, San Dimas does not take the highest formula when we calculate these, and so we want you to know that they're on the low side to begin with, average or below, but boy, they give you a great peace of mind. And the other thing is that when you sell your property or you're going to finance, and the bank says we want to see all the building permit activity on this home, and your home is 50 years old and it's never had a building permit pulled on it, the bank could be suspicious to say, well, yeah, you have new windows, you have a water heater replaced, and where are the permits for those? Because the bank wants to know. Maybe the buyer will also want to know and make sure. But as a homeowner or a building owner, we would encourage folks to get the permits. And it gives you that peace of mind, and it allows us to make sure that the contractor did the work correctly.
It's some protection against the unscrupulous contractors. And I can tell you from experience, both knowing people and also being a lawyer and representing people who have really been taken on contracts by people who were unlicensed or just totally unethical. And the things they did, it's the building inspector that's your best friend. If you're dealing with a contractor that wants to cut all the corners, it's amazing. You can talk to building inspectors. In fact, we have some photographs here of bad examples, but there was a situation of a building, commercial building being built, and it was bolted with the mud sill or whatever they call it that the studs are connected to, and it turned out that where the bolts went into the foundation happened to be in the way of where they lined it up where some of their. So the way they dealt with that, the contractor dealt with that, is he just cut the stud off. So about every third or fourth stud in this wall, good-sized wall, did not reach the ground level and was not attached to the. And then when the building inspectors said, "Look, this won't work," well, the contractor went and told the owner, "Well, these people are totally unreasonable in San Dimas. There's nothing wrong with this." And the building inspector showed him the pictures, and the owner realized, "Whoops, I may have the wrong contractor." So the revenue that's produced by building permits that's a service revenue, and it basically has to be reasonably connected with the work we do, with the cost of performing the service. It is not a revenue type of tax. The fee for that is really we're obligated to calculate the reasonable value of what or the cost, what it's going to cost in manpower and everything to do it. So it is important, and a lot of people are obviously complying.
And they are, and we appreciate that. And I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of encouragement that sometimes you just kind of want to make the project a little more cost effective to you. And there's reasons for the code requirements. Some of them may seem onerous, but for example, to put a moisture barrier under a concrete surface that's a living quarters. Some people will want to expand on their patio and build out that direction for a family room extension. And so we will come and say, well, there needs to be a moisture barrier for living quarters. And what that does is it keeps the water away from the living quarters so the mold doesn't develop, or it doesn't develop as easily. So many of the code requirements are going to make your home a lot more comfortable to live in because they're there for safety. They're there for good reason. And you know, I'm glad you mentioned about our building, folks and inspectors. Sometimes, I mean, they really do try to make sure that the code is followed and the plans are followed. And so, sometimes that gets to the point where, it's, why are you being so picky, or this is good enough? And to our guys, we're willing to work with things where, how can we make it so that it can be code compliant, or if there's an interpretation that we can make that it's okay, we'll do that. But on the other hand, if the code requires certain levels of size of rebar, or it needs to be in a certain place to maintain the strength, or to maintain the design requirements. Those are the things we have made contractors redo when they're not properly done, to the owner's benefit.
Definitely to the owner's benefit.
Well, I do have a couple other things, but if there's another call, we'd sure be happy to take it.
We have about 10 minutes or so left. If you would like to call, be sure to call us now. Don't mind interrupting Blaine in the explanation of these things. He has a lot of things that he can cover, but we're more than happy to talk to you.
One thing that I guess we can kind of deal with in a little bit while we wait for that call is one of the sometimes we will focus on a particular kind of use in the community that someone says, we could sure use a lot more restaurants, and or this particular or a shoe store and so forth. And so not only do we analyze things to by the total retail sales production, there are ways that by category we can find out the performance of our retail base in different areas and categories, like shoe stores or apparel, clothing stores. Auto sales is another kind of comparison that we don't do very well in, by the way, when it comes to auto dealers in town. And usually, as folks know, auto dealers they're really great sales tax generators. I mean, an average car dealership may be worth $350,000 to $400,000 a year in their sales, and some are even a lot more than that. And so And most of our adjoining cities have car dealerships, and that's a big part of their. So the fact that our retail sales base per capita is higher than theirs is remarkable. On the other hand, we do have something that they would really value too, and frankly, something like a Costco center and a Costco store competes very well when it comes to, the economic benefit compared to auto dealers. And I know a lot of folks in my peers in the industry would be more than happy to trade maybe a car dealership for a Costco, but
along that line, a few years ago, we decided, one of our council members was very much interested in us hiring a consultant, and there was a particular consultant that he thought, and this was a person who would help generate businesses that we could attract to generate sales tax. And so he came and consulted with us. And he's a capable consultant and gave us some good ideas and things. But we sat down, and he asked, "Well, are you talking to anybody?" And they said, we said, Lowe's is very interested, and Costco is very interested. And he said, "You don't need a consultant." Everybody wants a Lowe's and a Costco.
yeah.
So his deal was basically the people then, or what you were really looking for, were Lowe's, Home Depot, Costco, a Walmart, only the union battles with Walmart sometimes turn Walmart down, or Target, and the fact that we had Target, the other place that we have, and we didn't know we were recruiting them, but it's a really hot item to have, is a Trader Joe's. So we have a Trader Joe's down by our Target. So we have drawn here or attracted some very good businesses that have prospered when others have not prospered.
It's interesting. Sometimes folks will say, "Well, I would sure like an Outback restaurant, and so go get one." And so the mindset is that cities have somehow this ability to go and contact businesses, and they're not here because you just haven't invited them yet. The way, and we've got a new report that we'll be sharing with the council this coming week, and maybe we'll talk about it in the show sometime soon, this market study. Because it really is a very effective way to kind of talk about how businesses make their decisions. And there's a rule of thumb. If by the time a business, you're thinking of contacting someone, and if they truly want to come to your town, they've already know everything about you. And they don't look at it they look at it as far as the number of people within a certain area of your community or the market area. They will want to know your demographics and the income spending capacity of your residents. They also want to know the population density. So if you have a good income, but there's not as many people within that driving distance of the store or the restaurant, then they're going to go to places where they may have 100,000 people within 3 miles. And we can only produce 35,000 people within 3 miles. And so they have a set of criteria that they use to make their decisions.
Well, in addition to that, even they may know all those answers. Blaine and I were, and a couple other members of the council, we went to the League of California Cities. That's probably several years ago now, but there was an extra early session where the person who I believe was the CEO of Bristol Farms.
Yes, that's right.
And he came as a small group, and we talked afterwards. He knew every intersection in San Dimas, Claremont, Laverne, and every piece of property. I mean, and he knew the demographics of all of Southern California. The guy was just amazing. So, but they said, well, we have to have that information because when we're looking for something, we have to know everything that's out there. And that has been our experience when we have contacted people or they made any contact with us, they already have an awful lot of information.
And so they know us really well, and they know how well everyone who's here is doing. and they look for holes in the market where they could find their success. And so, but I guess the point is, you may think an ice cream store is just really great, and we don't have one here, and boy, we should. Or certain kinds of retail uses. We will contact them, and we do and have. But they do have their criteria. When we contact them, they will be looking for the information that now we have to give them. But if they're really interested, they've already figured you out, and they've already identified their markets, because that's what they're in the business for. They know where they've been successful in other areas, and so they want to take the metrics from that area, and that's what they apply. And if you can meet those, then that helps. One thing that hurts us, one thing that helps us is we're a great town. I mean, it's a great place to have a retail store. What hurts us the most is population density. The number of people within the market area that's close, because we've got foothills to the north, Benelli Park to the south, and a corridor east and west of us. And if we were more of a center and had more population north and south and on either side, then some of those that require higher populations or higher densities, like a Whole Foods, for example. A Whole Foods requires 100,000 people in 3 minutes, 5 minutes. And so that kind of traffic flow. So all of those things come into play.
Well, it's Blaine, I think we have just a couple of minutes left. There may be some other, there may be some interest. Maybe you only have one, but you mentioned
three.
Okay, you mentioned the goal line. There are other developments on the goal line regarding our lawsuit, and people might be interested in not totally all of that, but in the kind of design that we're trying to get the PUC and the goal line authority, construction authority, to be interested in at Bonita and Cataract.
Bonita and Cataract is our issue, and so they've made a determination that the frequency of trains competing with the traffic means that there must be a bridge. In other words, they must elevate the tracks over the top of the intersection. When they do that, they need to build walls anywhere from 12 to 35 feet high to hold the dirt, to be able to build the bridge high enough for the traffic to go underneath. And so that means that they would want to build those walls. We would want them to expand the bridge as wide as possible, because it's a big intersection to begin with. And if you can expand the width of the bridge, it makes it more open underneath and reduces the impact of those 35-foot walls. So our efforts are to try and make sure that the bridge is wide, to reduce the impact. And also the intersection design is one that works well with our community. We're working on a roundabout design for that intersection. The benefit is so large, it could do a roundabout, but it's different and unique for the railroad people to deal with a roundabout for pedestrians, or for how they accommodate a bridge and all that. And it looks like, Kurt, we have less than a minute. So.
Okay, one of the things, and you might think about this and give us a call sometime, one of the possible designs is an old-fashioned iron, or not iron, steel bridge, that the kind that you see forever, that's got loops kind of over, and this would probably require two of those kind of things. So if you have any thoughts about that, think about it and give us a call next time and tell us whether you think that would be a good design for there. It would be open, and it would be different, and it would be an entrance to the community. So we're working on that and other things. But thank you very much for watching tonight and for participating. Thank you very much to the caller. We appreciate that. I believe we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Yes.
I can't remember whether we run into some complications somewhere along here.
I think the next 2 weeks we're okay.
Okay. But we'll be back in 2 weeks, and we'll have things to talk about, but primarily we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.